Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Joel Gandara Podcast. I've got somebody that probably everyone needs to hear from. Whether you're married, divorced, young, and haven't been married yet, I think this is important stuff. And you're going to meet our guest in a second. But before I do that, something new I'm doing is I'm going to talk to you about a sponsor for this episode. Bear with me for 30 seconds, I promise. ShopNaturalLife.com. This website, go check it out. Got to be 21 or older to be on it. What it does is provides all natural solutions to common ailments for a better quality of life, natural remedies for pain relief, better sleep, less anxiety, more energy, and much more. I know the owner, Gabriel Suarez, and he's actually a member of our brotherhood. And he has sent me products before, and I've used them, and they're fantastic. I also have friends who use them, and they say very good things about them. One more sponsor. If you're local in South Florida, where I am, and you know somebody who's not 100% and they need physical therapy, but you don't want to go to the run-of-the-mill factory physical therapy. If you've ever done it, you know what I'm talking about, where you're just a number. They've got 5 people working out. They come and tell you something, look at you for a second, and walk away. If you don't want to do that, if you want to send your parents, your grandparents, yourself to something much better, qualityinhometherapy.com. It's run by Dr. Vincenzo Bombara. He's a friend of mine. So if you or someone you love is aging at home, managing Parkinson's, or worried about falls, help can come to you. It's Dr. Vincenzo Bombaro and his team. They're geriatric and Parkinson's specialists providing outpatient physical and occupational therapy brought directly to your home. Dr. Bombaro's mission is to help people age in place safely, stay independent longer, and maintain quality of life without the stress of traveling to a clinic. So if you're looking for guidance, support, or a trusted local resource, he and his team are here. I've worked out with Dr. Bombara, and he knows his stuff. Before he was a doctor, he was a physical therapist, and he was a personal trainer before he became a physical therapist, and he knows his stuff. He knows how to help people do things the right way. Okay. The reason I said that everyone needs to listen to this, when we were introduced to Dr. Baucom, I immediately saw what he's about, saw he's an author of 7+ books. He's onto something, and he's got a system called Save the Marriage. He's also got an app, but he talks about couples hitting the pause button. At first, I thought that meant that they take a break from each other. Maybe they get a separation. He says, no, 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 this is way before that. They were, and I'll let him get into this and we'll talk about it. But you start off in love and crazy, but at some point, people hit the pause button, and then that relationship doesn't look quite the way it used to. And you can feel it, you can sense that energy. I work with men, and doctor, I hear this stuff all the time. It's not how it used to be. She's gone crazy. It's become this, this, and this. What is this pause? First of all, thanks for being here. I love what you're going to bring us. What is this pause button? What have you figured
Yeah.
out?
So first, Joe, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and because this is such an important topic, and it happens so many times. So first, let me just say that I hear a lot of people who come in and they think they know what's wrong with their marriage, and they'll tell me something. And when they tell it to me, I'm like, that's the symptom. So here's the cause. It's disconnection in the relationship, and that is the result of that pause button. So let's go back in time. This is where it all starts. So you find this person you're attracted to, and you start building this connection, putting a lot of energy in. And for a lot of people, that early stage is just overwhelming for them, right? All of their energy and all of their thoughts and everything goes directed towards building this relationship, to the point that you get to this place where you're like, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. And so you get married. That solidifies that commitment, we think. And so that also puts into place another problem, because all of the energy you put into getting into that relationship can't be sustained long term. And so at some point in the marriage, when you think you've got it down and the love has got you going and it'll carry you through, that's when you hit the pause button. And it's for legitimate reasons. You know, people will say, well, we need to put our energy into parenting, or we need to put our energy into the career, or dealing with aging parents who might need to go to physical therapy, or lots of these other pieces. But the result of that hitting the pause button, like we will get back to us at some point after this has happened, The result of that is actually disconnection. One of the things that people think they're doing is kind of putting their relationship into kind of some suspended animation that they'll just re-engage, down the road, and they'll take it back on. And the problem is that when we'll do that is always out there in the future. And the problem is, as we build those habits of disconnection, it's easier to let it be a little further out in the future. So if it's the parenting thing, it's when the kids are out of diapers, well, get back to us, or when they're in school, or when they're out of school, or when they're out of college, or after the grandkids are in diapers, or wherever it is, it's always out there. If it's career, it's always this future time. When I get to this point, when I finally make it here, when I finally make it here. And we're building in and baking in these disconnection habits. So you spend all of this time building up this love by habits of connection. And then you hit this point where you're like, okay, love will carry us. And that's what fools us. There's a momentum that we built up that feels like we're still, in this relationship together, but the connection that fed it has been disconnected. And once we do that, it's just a matter of when the momentum falls down and suddenly somebody goes, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Or they start fighting about different topics, or they start investing somewhere else because we all need that human connection. I mean, that is part of what makes us human. And so they over invest in the kids. They over invest in work. They over invest in friends. They over invest in somebody outside of the marriage. And it looks like those are the problems. Those are just the symptoms of that disconnection that happened when they hit the pause button.
So how do you avoid this? How do you, I guess, if you were consulting or helping a young couple or mid 20s, they're about to get married, giving them the path that, hey, this may happen, right? This might creep in. And then we'll talk about people who are already in it. But how do you prepare them to know that this is going to happen so they can learn to avoid it when they see the signs?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I've been through this. So when I was still doing clinical in the office work, there were seven places of faith in the community I lived in, where if you got married there, you were coming through my office for 3 visits. And so I got the experience of talking with lots of people who were about to go do that, go get married. And I always ask them, why is it? I mean, if I walk down the street and say, what are the chances of a marriage making it? Most people would know that it's roughly 50-50. It's not quite, but let's call it 50-50. It's a coin toss. And I would say, why do you think you're going to beat the odds? I mean, that's an interesting one, to be confident enough that you're going to do this. Why do you think you're going to beat the odds? And to the person, they're like, because we actually have this real love. We really have it. And so before they get married, they are already convinced that they have beat that, which means that it's hard to convince somebody on the front side of the mistakes they're going to make on the backside, because they think that they have the relationship it takes. That's the tragedy of it. I think that the education part of this actually has to happen before they're at that point. Once they're at that point of getting ready to get married, they usually are overly optimistic about what they have. And so this is kind of my frustration with culture, is we don't do a lot of preparation for people when they're either seriously dating or even before then, of thinking, what does this look like? Because then we're at that point more rational and more aware of what might come our way. So the kind of the irrational exuberance that goes into the wedding, they are hard of hearing of the problems that might come their way.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
like a friend saying, man, my friend's dating this girl, but she's trouble for him. But he can't say that most times, right? They're not going to listen. The guy's in love with her. I asked the guy recently, didn't you see this coming? You've now been married for 15 years. You've got kids, all these problems that
Mhm.
are in your life. What you didn't see these all these red flags you're telling me about? You didn't see them when you were young? He goes, I just found her so beautiful. And
Mhm.
guys get blinded by beauty, right? I don't know
Mhm.
what women get blinded by. I don't see what women see in men, but I could see that happening. I've always thought this. I said it to my wife yesterday. I wish that in school, rather than focus so much on some of the things that they focus on, I think there should be self-improvement, right? A lot more personal growth and teach that in elementary and middle school, but also how to pick a mate because
Mhm.
we're not taught that. You have to just figure it out and go on this feeling of love. Is that love feeling real if it ends?
Well, the love feeling is real, but if you stop nurturing it, it will fall away. I mean, that is just the nature. It's the nature of any relationship. Relationships are all based in connection. And how much connection matters, right? So any relationship is either growing and expanding or it's shrinking and dying. That's the only two directions that relationships go. We can have stagnant friendships. Well, they're shrinking and dying. We can have friendships that continue to grow because we do things together. We connect with them. This is what happens, for instance, in your community, right? The people, as they get to know each other better, they grow tighter in their connection. That is, they're growing their connection. So that's because they're attending to it. They're putting energy into it. And a lot of times couples think that they are putting energy into it, but they are really just managing the household, managing the parenting, managing the schedule, managing the finances. Years ago now, had a couple came to my office. They both wanted to have a better marriage. I mean, that was why they were in my office. And so I gave them an assignment of going to dinner together, just the two of them, not the kids, which was always what they were doing, just the two of them. And I wanted to know what happened. So they came back to my office the next week and I said, how'd it go? And they're like, well, it's kind of weird at first. I mean, we didn't have the kids there, but it went okay. We talked together and we filled our time. And I looked at them. I said, what'd you talk about? We
The
talked about the
kids?
kids. We talked about our daily schedule. We talked about some things that need to be done around the house. And I went, that's not connecting. That's just sharing information. You're reporting to each other about that. You're not rapporting with each other. You're not building any rapport. It's just a reporting. And so I sent them off again, this time with the assignment that they could not talk about the kids and they could not talk about their daily life and they could not talk about what needed to be done around the house. That was a little more difficult. Now, what they had on their side is they wanted to make progress. So they did it. They came back and talked about how they talked about their dreams again, what they hoped for, and they had actually done some planning. And you could see the difference. They were like connected with each other and smiling at each other, and their eyes were a little more alive because they had gotten back into connection. The problem is, a lot of times people don't recognize that until more damage has been done. And many times it happens that only one person is seeing the pain of it. One person is like, yeah, I mean, this is just the way it is. I mean, I've heard people say, I can't believe they left me. I thought this was just a stage in life. I thought we would get through this. I've had others say, I can't believe they're as unhappy as they are. I thought we would get through this and get back together. I mean, there's a lot of ways that people frame it, but they think that they will still turn the corner.
Yeah, I hear all the time. Well, because I have a 31-day challenge series that guys go through. It's for men only. And one of the challenges on one of the day is don't do it this day because you got need a few days to plan or a week, but look out in your calendar and book a date with your wife, and it's a four-part date. And the reason I came up with a four-part date because when I was young, I read a book about how to get girls. And the thing is, you have to take them to different environments so they see you in all different kinds of settings, and you
Mm.
break down that fear of I don't know who this guy is, so it's to kind of rekindle things, and the guy has to plan all the four-part date. They got to go to a show, they got to go to a dinner, all these different things. And the feedback I get from guys when they come back from doing this is, "Oh man, we I don't know when the last time we dated is." It blows my mind because I go on many dates per week with my wife. We date all day. We go sometimes for breakfast, then we go for lunch, and we do all these things. Um, how does a guy, and we're talking to guys here mostly because that's who listens to this, how does a guy avoid all of this? It's giving it attention, but can you give us some practical tips? Like I said, plan a four-part date. That's just one of 1,000 things, and you've
Mm.
probably got many more. But can you give me something? How do we stay connected? How do we take more interest in our wives? How do we win them over again and keep them interested?
So before I answer that, let me put a cautionary footnote in there. There are a lot of times when people realize they're disconnected and they're so disconnected that it can't sustain something like that date. There's not enough connection there. It feels like there's pressure there. And so when people say, well, we're going to do date night or we're going to do a romantic getaway or we're going to a couples encounter weekend or something like that, if they are at a sufficiently disconnected state, that will actually collapse the attempts
Mhm.
they're making because the connection can't hold it. It's too fragile. And so the person who is the receiver of that suddenly feel like they're being chased. And when we feel chased, we space. That's what I call it, the chasing and spacing. And you need to pace. And so sometimes we have to back up a little bit and go a little slower before we get to the point where that it can manage that. If there's still connection there, if they've still got some relatively strong connection, those things can be great. So it's not that those are bad up in and of themselves, but in the wrong environment where there's not enough connection to handle that, it can
It
cause,
backfires.
yeah, it can backfire and cause more distance than you think. So let's handle the how do you avoid it? The first thing is to ask the question, have we already hit the pause button? And where are we if we have? So if there are plenty of people who have not yet hit the pause button, but they recognize that it takes more than just the love to get through a relationship successfully. That's a good start, but it's not the vehicle, right? It's the gas in the vehicle maybe, but it's not the vehicle. And so recognizing that is a way of keeping away from it. If you know that that's a tendency, then you say, how can we manage that? How can we avoid that? And that is a good time. If you haven't hit the pause button, date night would be a great way of getting past that. And there are plenty of couples who haven't done the kind of the dating thing in their marriage, but they still have managed to stay connected. So they just add on a piece. One of the things that I often get pushback on is people are like, I can't spend as much time as I did when we were falling in love. That's not sustainable. And it's either all or nothing in that thinking instead of going, okay, you do have the relationship. So it is there, it's established. You've got this commitment together. Now, how do you live into that in ways that keep you connected? And in ways that nurture the relationship, but don't take, multiple hours. I mean, I remember my dating life. I was focused on, can I win this person over? And that occupied a lot of my psychic space and my emotional energy and everything else. Sure, I managed at that point, I was in college. I managed to go to classes, I managed to get good grades, but anything else was there. And then you get married, and we got married. We immediately went to grad school. Both of us were in grad programs. Both of us were working. Both of us were trying to do everything we could. And then we still had to go, how do we make room for us? We did, partly because we were surviving together. But sometimes couples go, okay, pause, let's do these things. So knowing it is the first thing, having an awareness and asking the question, have we done that? Or more specifically, how have we? Let me bring in another piece. I believe that there are three pillars, three levels of connection, and this helps give an assessment point and B, targets. So the first one is physical connection. And when I say that, a lot of times people are like, oh, you mean sex? And my answer is no, but yeah, that is one way. But any physical loving touch, that's what we're talking about, loving touch. My dog doesn't understand, I don't think understands words I say, but she likes to cuddle up against me. She understands physical connection. So when I'm sitting down, she's up against me and wanting to be petted, but more than that, just wanting to be close. Humans have that same need. That's what we share with warm-blooded creatures, right? We need that warmth and closeness. So that's a very primal piece. And it includes hand holding, hugs, kisses, pats on the back, everything. It's nonverbal. All that's nonverbal. That's physical connection. Second level is emotional connection. Emotional connection is verbal and nonverbal. So as we've been sitting here talking, I can see you're in agreement with some things I'll say, and you're nodding along. That's nonverbal. And there are lots of ways we do that. I've had times when, something's going on with our kids or with friends, and I'll look at my wife and she'll look at me and we'll have that eye look like, this is crazy. You get this, right? And it's just an awareness that we're on the same page. And that leads to feeling connected with this person. So then there's the verbal. And the verbal is where we share how that emotional connection is going. There are two pieces that we get each other and that we support each other. Do I feel like my wife gets me? She laughs at my jokes. I'm like, oh, she gets me. For whatever reason, she'll laugh at him. I'm like, okay, she gets me. And feels like I get her, right? Of what's interesting to her, what's important to her, what she dreams about. That's the getting piece. The support piece is both in the good times and the bad times. Can you share what's going on? And even if it's just sitting with somebody, can you be with them through that point where you feel like you're in this together? This is where it feels like we are in this joint process together and we're a team. That's emotional connection. So verbal and nonverbal. Then there's spiritual connection. And when I say this, people are like, oh, you mean religion? And my answer is no, but yes, that does carry some of that. The spiritual connection is where we are allowing our most vulnerable, deep part of ourselves to be known by somebody else. It's where we share our hopes, our dreams, our fears, what we want in life, what worries us in life, where we've been in life. That is fully verbal. That comes across in verbal ways. And so back to those couples that I talked to before they got married, I would ask how they fell in love. And it was often a spiritual connection conversation. And they would tell me about it. And I think a lot of people would just lump that in with the emotional connection piece, but they would have all of this physical connection and emotional connection, but then they had this conversation often late at night into the early hours where they talked about where they came from in life, what's important to them, what their values are, what they hope for, what they dream about, what scares them about life. And the person said, I felt connected with them, but that's when I knew that that was my person. So that spiritual connection, though, is often left behind as one of the first things to go. Couples stop spending time talking about what's important to them, what their values are, what their hopes and dreams are, because they think that they did that, like it's done, and that doesn't change. And so then if that is gone, you've got two other pieces. And as they begin to fray, because you hit the pause button, you begin to know less and less about each other and be less and less connected on any of those three levels. And that's what brings it down.
Yeah, and because they're busy, paying the bills, going to work, taking care of kids, right? So that fills the spot of, or sometimes they do spend time together, but I've noticed couples just watch TV together or they watch Netflix and they don't share. They're not talking. So
Sometimes they're not even sharing a TV, right? They're just looking at their phone or their iPad
yeah,
or whatever. And so it used to be, at least a lot of times, families would be gathering and watching something that was common to them and could chat about that. Now we've even divided that up. Our personal time is divided. And still, even if it's just watching TV together, sure, you can have some physical connection, but unless you're maybe talking about what that meant to you, there's not a whole lot more going on. It's a very
well,
passive.
in our time, Dr. Baucom, we had not only maybe one television in the house, but we had the inconvenience of commercials. And when we
Mm,
all sat and watched together during the commercial break, we might be getting up to get a glass of water, and but we were all talking about what
yeah.
was happening. I
Yep.
remember watching like ABC Disney movie of the week on Sunday nights, and it was my brother and I, my mom and my dad, and the four of us would watch it, and
Hmm.
we'd watch it after dinner, and we'd talk about what was going on in that movie. Those are special times. That doesn't happen anymore. Everybody's got a TV in their room, a phone, a iPad, and they're all watching their own thing. And there's no break. There's no commercial break.
Yeah. And so there's less commonality in what we share together, right? That we're
Yeah.
living in almost separate realities.
Worlds. Yeah.
So that all compounds what we're going through. So now this isn't new. When I was talking with couples, 20, 30 years ago, they were still hitting the pause button back then. And that was when we were watching those shows. So it's not that it's different now. It's just that there are accelerations to that. You've got these accelerants of the disconnection that play in. So all of those. So now we've just named it. It's easier now to assess where are we on those three levels of connection. Are we physically connected? Are we emotionally connected? Are we spiritually connected? And if not, or if not enough, you now have targets that you can aim for. How can
Yeah.
I increase the physical, the emotional, the spiritual?
Yeah. So you can get a rating on each of those and then work your way up. But it does require both to want to fix this. You know,
Well, eventually that is true. But I think one person can start the process. That my belief is
Mhm.
that's almost always how it starts. It's rare
Yeah.
that both look at each other one day and go, "Hey, we're not at a good place. Let's work on this together." It's almost always one person who
Sure.
has to say, "Hey, I want to start this."
Makes perfect sense. You mentioned earlier, I'm just writing notes as you're talking, and one that just jumped out at me was hand holding. My wife and I go for walks and we always hold hands, whether
Mm.
we're at the store, around our neighborhood. And I am blown away, and we talk about it every time we drive by in our neighborhood, and we rarely see couples holding hands. They're obviously married. Sometimes they have kids, they're walking a dog together. We see them a couple times a month. Hardly anyone holds hands. So it's such a little thing, but I don't know. For me, my love language is physical touch. I don't know how it doesn't happen more often. But now let me jump to something. So here is something I have heard over and over for years, and it's from guys. That's the perspective I work with. Um, I hear guys say, I work a lot. I'm putting in a lot of hours. I'm providing for our family. I can't do everything. I'm working 60 hours a week, and my wife now complains that I don't spend enough time at home. They don't spend enough time with the kids. So guys are perplexed. They don't know what to do because if they feel like their job is to put their head down and just work and provide, but then that's not appreciated enough, apparently. So what would you say to a guy like that, or what is the real issue there?
So that is both the lost opportunity for the guys to not have that connection point with family, and a loss for the family. I mean, so it's everybody loses out on that. I think one of the things that often happens is when there is minimal participation, it feels maximal that nothing is happening to somebody in the family, and that's just kind of the nature. If something is lacking, our mind sees it as completely lacking, right? And so sometimes when you don't spend any time is actually you're spending minimal time. And so again, this is a piece of the symptomology of disconnection that somebody is frustrated that they don't see their spouse putting in, and it frankly goes both ways. It's just what they're choosing to key on. The kind of the disrespect, disdain process is because of the disconnection. And so you begin to look for evidence that proves your point, first of all. But second, to be able to step back and go, okay, yes, busy day, I'm working, or busy week, I'm working 60 hours a week, and it's still important for me to have these connections. I was speaking with somebody a couple of days ago, and the person was like, I'm busy day in, day out every day," and told me his hours. And I asked, I said, I mean, that's not a sustainable process for you. I mean, just in health, that's not sustainable. What are you going to do? And he finally admitted that it's easier to not take the time he could be home, right? It's easier to add some hours at work because that's a place of
Mm,
comfort. It's a place where you feel like you're winning. It's a place where you feel like you're doing it right, as opposed to somewhere where you're struggling because you don't know what to do. And
mm,
so for some people, that overwork is also an underperformance and a an avoidance. For some people, it's
yeah.
just the nature of the job. I mean, that really is that. And so then you ask the question, how can I do that? So let's kind of go through those pieces. Physical connection. At the end of a day, long day, sitting by your spouse, not talking, but holding hands or being close enough that you are physically in contact is connection. And our it is primal, so much so that our body does a lot of hormonal things when we are in connection with somebody, when we're close to somebody. It bonds us. That is what happens in that physical touch. That doesn't take extra time. It's just part of where you are. Checking in on how was your day, um, and going beyond I had two meetings and a report, right? That's just giving data, but actually saying, it was a really hard day. I did this. That is connecting in and of itself. We're now talking moments of a day. Being able to go in and maybe check in the kids when they're going to bed and be with them a few minutes. Again, moments. So it is not another full-time job to do the connection. It does mean though that you have to do those things on a regular basis. Way back, I had some pretty crappy cars during college and right after college, and I pushed a lot of cars. So I remember one thing about that experience. Getting it moving again took excessive energy to get it going. Once it was rolling, it wasn't bad. And so when people find themselves in a disconnected spot, regaining the momentum is hard. It's easy to maintain the momentum once you get it moving, or if you never let it happen. But once it's stopped, you have to go, okay, if this is important to me, I'm going to have to get that momentum going so that we can get somewhere. And I may be the one doing the most of the shoving, but that's the nature of this, of saying this is important. So there's a myth that I often hear people say, well, it shouldn't be this hard. And if it was meant to be, it shouldn't be this hard. And I'm like, where do we put that anywhere else in life? If this job was meant to be, it shouldn't be a struggle. I
It
shouldn't
should
be a
be easy. It should
challenge.
come
Should be
naturally.
easy. If I was meant to have muscles, I shouldn't have to go to the gym. I mean, it's just everywhere around us. And then we get to a relationship like, oh, it's too hard. It's not meant to be.
Mm.
My thing is it's effort, not it, whether it's hard or not, but it's effort. And most anything important in life has effort attached to it.
Yeah, but every romantic movie kind of just makes it's a feeling. It's got to fall
There it
in
is.
place. The stars have to align. That's probably what we're taught as kids. So you said checking in. Now, I'll tell you, I always have this wonder when I hear about issues in relationships, and I'm not a counselor and I don't consult or anything and coach on that, but I talk to guys about what's happening in their life. And I am fortunate because I don't have to work at, let me check in with my wife. Let me have 3 alarms a day to send her a text. I just do that because I'm curious. I'm really curious. What has she done today? And I didn't see her, and I was out, and she went out, and I miss her. And I'll write those things to her. And I think those are positives, right? She probably
Hmm.
loves getting a text from me that says, "I miss you. You're so beautiful." But see, I don't have to work at that. I think I was born with it. My parents would always, the word in Spanish is enamorado. When I was a little kid, my parents would always tell everybody, oh, he's an enamorado, meaning every little girl in my class, I'd fall in love with them, right? And I'd want to be their boyfriend or whatever. I'd pick one and I'd really go crazy over her. But I have friends and I know guys who just say, no, I don't check in with my wife. I'm busy at work.
Hmm.
And they own the company. They could break away for 10
Hmm.
seconds and type this text. So I'm not harder working. I'm not a better person. I was just born with this serious interest in whoever my spouse is, and it's been the same one for 23 years, happily, that I check in a lot, and I think it's very beneficial. How can somebody? Are they? Do you have to be born with it? Should they set an alarm, a reminder, to do these little tiny connection points, even when they're busy working 60 hours a week?
Yeah, so let me point out a couple of things, and then I'll see if I can answer. One is you said that's not work. Well, it's effort. And whether it feels like effort or not, it's effort. You're doing something that requires some effort. The reason it doesn't feel like work is because you're invested in it. Like that's important to you, right? And I talked with a guy years ago who's like, I probably need to get another job. My job is too easy. I love it so much. I love everything about it, and I just don't feel like I'm working. I'm like, that's an ideal job, dude. I mean,
That's
that's the
heaven.
way you want it. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like that because it fits in with where you are and who you are. So for you, that works because that's who you are. That doesn't mean it's not effort. It's the same effort for you to write that text as it would be for me or anyone else. It occurs to you because you have the habit of doing that. So back to that, the habits of connection that we build. When people are dating, they're often sending messages. How are you? What are you doing? Where are you going? What can we do? They're sending those and they're not thinking like, oh, this is such an effort. They're like, I want to know this. And so the effort is still there. It just doesn't feel that way. They have these habits of connection. Then when you disconnect, you get into the habits of not doing that. That is a habit too. And then it feels like it's an uphill battle to do it. But guess what happens if you start doing it? You form the habits of connection again. And so the question is, so what runs habits? It's systems. Do I have systems in place that help me get there? And this is true across life. Do people go to the gym every day when they decide to, or because they set it up that their life is going to do that? Do they schedule it? Do they put their gym clothes out so that's what they're putting on in the morning and might as well go then? Or eating. If you have a system of eating well as opposed to being surrounded by junk food, that's a system. Same with this. Do we have a system? So, yes, it might be setting up a reminder on the phone. Hey, I need to check in with my wife. That is a fair beginning point. And people go, well, that feels so artificial. We all live by schedules and alarms and systems
And
that are
autopilots.
and are doing things because it works. And it's the same with that is, are we building in ways of connecting? And so I've had people who wrote a reminder to themselves on how they want to go in the door and had it on a reminder that shows up when they're almost home. It pops up and
Mm.
says, I want to come in the door looking like this. And so then they go, oh, reminder, I'm going to work on that. When before they would just be kind of getting home and being exhausted, and everybody gets the scraps, the leftovers. And so, how do they want to come in? So, yeah, it may require you to set up some systems in place. In fact, anytime we change a habit, we're putting systems in place to change the habit
Until it becomes your new autopilot. You're
until
right.
it's automatic.
That's a great point, Dr. Baucom. When you're going to walk in the house from work, if you sat in the garage for a minute and did some breath work or got out of the car and did some push-ups and just felt alive, and you show up that way, that memory for your wife and for your kids is going to be a lot different than you looking defeated and exhausted because you spend 9 hours at work and 2 hours or an hour in traffic. And that's the memory that they're going to walk in. Yes, it will require location based vibration on your phone, a reminder that, hey, when you pulled up in the garage, you got to spend 90 seconds doing a little bit of work. That's amazing. And I think it's going to pay off because you're going to just show up so differently. I'm glad you said that. That's a great reminder. I had somebody ask me recently in the last year, someone in my men's group, they said they wanted to have a call with me because they were having an issue with their fiance and it was collapsing the relationship. And the question he asked me on the phone was, hey, Joel, you had to have ups and downs as you were building your business. I sold it. I'm retired now. But he said, when you were doing all of that, you had to have ups and downs, right? I said, oh, man, you don't know. I lost everything twice, everything. Like I went to zero. It reminded me like I'm going to be back in poverty the way I grew up as a kid. It was bad. And he says, okay, perfect. I'm glad you told me that. How did that not ruin your relationship with your wife? And so I answered him as best I could. And when I hung up, I went and asked my wife. And I asked her about it, and she goes, are you kidding me? That's when we got stronger
Mhm.
together. When the money was lost, when everything we invested in and didn't go out to dinner for 5 years or restaurants, we would pack a lunch and go sit on the beach because we just needed to build wealth and a business. And we just a couple times lost it all. And she reminded me of that. I go, you're right. We got closer every time things got better. So there is an element here. And I'm sure with your training, I'm sure that you have ideas to share now, but I want to add a twist to it. I have a theory that when we put money as like the number one thing, for me, money had a purpose. It was to get out of poverty and to build a comfortable life, but I knew where the finish line was and I stuck to it. And when I hit those numbers, that's it. I took my foot off the gas and I went extra mode into my kids and my wife and all that. And for me, that was at 38 years old, years ago. And it worked. When people are constantly chasing and making promises and saying, look, I'm going to get you that car. I'm going
Mhm.
to buy you that expensive house. When this happens, I think that throws an extra complication into the. So I'd love to get your feedback on all of that because it's been sitting with me for about a year since that gentleman shared that with me.
So I think we're still at a point where a lot of men feel like they have to earn love, and the money is the earning of it. So that's one way that that can infect things. And so then, when things aren't going well, how do you hide that, right? How do you not let that be the case? And earning love, that very concept is pretty deadly to a relationship. Having love for each other is what you did. And so I often remind couples, think about what you vowed because it was rich days and poor days, sick days and healthy days, good days and bad days. And I just ask, what other days are there that you didn't pledge to be together this as a team? And so that team piece is what you're talking about, how your wife said, that was where we were strong. So now let's bring in another piece. The way we grow strong in anything is because we take on challenges and we live in a challenge averse culture. We don't let our bodies get cold. We don't let our bodies not have food. I mean, everything is, can I stay within this little range? Years ago, I walk every day with my dogs. And years ago, I realized I was coming in every day complaining about the cold. I'm like, why am I complaining about the cold? It just is. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to go, okay, cold, challenge me. And so I started slacking off on what I was wearing. And so then I'd be out in, 30 degrees with shorts on, and people are like, you need to put on your coat, you're going to catch cold. And I'm like, no, this is me letting my body be challenged by these difficulties. And I don't think we have to go looking for the challenges. They're all around us all the time. But challenges are what make us resilient. We actually grow weak when we don't have challenges in front of us. And being able to say, as a couple, let's take on this challenge together, draws that relationship together. So I said my wife and I had managed to avoid that pause button. It is because when we first got married, we both went to grad school. We both were in grad school programs that required us to do free work as part of it, those internships. We were working minimal jobs and we had to depend on each other to get through, like, how are we going to pay rent this month? How are we going to eat? We had a ton of fried rice and a ton of waffles for several years. And that helped us to go, we're in this together, whatever happens. So when the kids came along, we're in this together. I believe that strong marriages have a we thought process. We are an entity. We're a team. We're in this together. And what I also believe is that's not a one-time reality. That you continually find new ways where life is saying, "Are you a we here?" And those tough times are blatant points when life is saying, okay, are you a we here? How are you going to be a team in this? How are you going to face this together and support each other? And so they keep coming and they don't stop. My parents are in their mid 80s and I watch them work as a team. When I'm sick, that's a new challenge. When they are more and more limited, that's a new challenge. And so it doesn't stop anywhere in life. It's just the new ones that come up and show you new places to be a team.
Yeah, that's a great point. So some guy is listening right now and they've hit the pause button. What does he do? He goes to your website, savethemarriage.com. How do they contact you? What's the first step? What do they do?
So let's walk down a path that goes in two directions. Let's say that they realized that they paused their relationship, and so it's kind of chronically paused, kind of chronically disconnected, but they're not ready to end it. The spouse isn't threatening that things are over or anything else. It's just that that's the Unpause app. And one of the things I like about the Unpause app is that apps can remind you. Instead, we're talking about changing these systems. So the Unpause app will send you a reminder in the morning. Have you done your exercise this morning? So it's got education, exercises, some assessment, and then some daily work for you to do. Built in there is some coaching that's virtual coaching based on my knowledge base. And so that gives some pretty good answers based on what I believe also. But it starts off in the morning, time for your morning thing. You can ignore it. I mean, that is an option, but if you're wanting to work on this, you pay attention. And then the evening, have you done your evening exercise? So that's the Unpause app. It can be
How
used
much
by one
time are they
person.
dedicating?
So the longest training is about 25 minutes, and that's not even daily. So we put into pieces. The daily piece, it takes about, depending on how long you're going to think about it, 10 minutes in the morning and maybe 5 in the evening. And then there is another extra exercise. It takes less than 20 minutes to do, and that's not even every day.
So an investment of time that's less than the average person watches Netflix or watches sports or listens to
Yeah,
podcasts
yeah,
to build a better marriage.
yeah. Yeah, we try to streamline it, and you're correct. When people say, I just don't have time, I'm like, have you watched TV?
Yeah.
Have you, whatever you're doing, if you're going to the bathroom, hey, guess what? You
Yeah.
can do
Jump
it
on your
there.
phone. It's in your hand anyway.
At least do that and not be watching some stupid video. So that is the Unpause app. If your marriage is truly in trouble, like, oh my gosh, we are headed for the cliff, that's the Save the Marriage system. So unpauseyourmarriage.com gets you to that if that's where you are. Savethemarriage.com gets you to the Save the Marriage system if you're more on the edge and really in trouble.
Excellent. I want to have you, and we'll talk about it after this show. I want to have you present to my guys and open up that possible question and answer after, because I think those real life situations
Absolutely.
are gonna. You've had the experience. You've been doing this quite a while, huh?
So I started work in the early 90s And my first website went up in 99, and I've been
Wow.
working with people around the world since 2000.
Wow. It's funny as we get older, we hear 99 and we think that's the other day. And then we go, oh, wait, that was
It's
27 years
that's
ago.
so last century, right?
Yeah, that's nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
So remind us, give us one more time the two websites. And is the app, can they get it at the App Store or do they go to the website to get it?
So the website will get you, I mean, there is a way you get it from the App Store, but you need to go through this. So unpauseyourmarriage.com is the app, unpauseyourmarriage.com, because that's what you're trying to do, unpause your marriage. Savethemarriage.com website, savethemarriage.com, and that is an online program.
Dr. Baucom, thank you for the work that you do and for bringing this value to our guys and our listeners. And I look forward to having you live presenting with them soon.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.